We're here today with Lucas Scott from Randolph College. Thank you so much for being here and for talking about your esports program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am definitely interested in getting involved in kind of all manners of the recruitment process, and international recruiting is definitely something that is going to look a little different down the future, especially as esports tends to gets more involved in the collegiate process, and I'm definitely interested to see how it grows.
That's great. And before we start, can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you got to your position?
Sure. So as many people in the esports industry are, lifelong gamer, love the whole genre. I kind of early on gravitated towards more multiplayer games. So when you get into multiplayer games, you tend to get a little bit more competitively invested. Watched a couple of leagues, stuff like Smite and early LCS was like really kind of my bread and butter for getting into like, oh, this is what an esports production can look like, and this is what kind of esports can grow into in the future is looking like these more professional traditional sports leagues. And kind of doing that, I got involved at my college. So I went to the University of Delaware. I got my diploma. Oh, it's mirrored. It's hard to tell. It's whatever. And through that, I started attending and participating in club events there, and eventually kind of grew throughout the leadership of the club that was running events there, the video game tournament club, and eventually we had a really successful Overwatch team back in 2017, which feels like a millennia ago. We were top 8 in the country in TESPA Collegiate. And through that, I really got into advocacy because I was also a political science student. So I was like, well, I got to be able to talk to somebody about how great our Overwatch team is and kind of, try and help them to help our infrastructure. And through that, and club leadership, we got our own student center PCs set up, and we got 30 PCs right in my senior year, right as I was getting ready to graduate. And then about a month after we opened up our arena at Delaware, COVID happened. So I got to graduate in that, which was a lot of fun. And, through COVID, one of the very first things that happened was like all of the collegiate leagues shut down. So me and a bunch of the other managers that I knew kind of around the country from placing well in Overwatch got together and was like, well, if Tespa's not going to finish out the season, then we might as well have like some way of saying like this was the best Overwatch team this year. So we threw together this little rinky-dink tournament that we called the meal plan, and the winning team got a pizza party. And through doing that and getting connected with all the top teams in collegiate Overwatch, I found that I actually really enjoyed throwing tournaments. So for the next couple of years, I was throwing tournaments virtually in COVID. So I was working with Nerd Street Gamers, running their Valorant, and working with their VCT Open schedule alongside LCS Challengers League, and I was also working with Esports Engine at the time to run like Halo, Fortnite, Call of Duty tournaments, and kind of through that I realized that job security in esports is a little tough, and I wanted to go somewhere where that had a dental plan. So I was looking around for jobs, and one of the ones that really stuck out to me was this tiny little college out in the mountains of Virginia that was offering a full-time esports coordinator job, and then now I'm the head coach of Randolph Esports.
That's great. That's great. Great intro.
Yeah,
And basically, does the esports program fall under athletics or student affairs? Like, what is
yeah.
the position?
No, I mean that's a very good question because a lot of places handle it very differently. And one of the things I'm very glad that I found when I came here was that they already had the infrastructure in place, so we already had all the nice PCs and a nice space with air conditioning and security cameras and everything already taken care of. And the other thing that I was really happy with was that we were not housed in athletics. Which, because we are a super small college, for the listeners, if you look up our stats, we have I think less than 1,000 students undergrad, and this year we actually have our largest incoming class, so maybe that number goes over 1,000 in the coming years, but we shall see. But because we are not housed under athletics, I am on the dean of students hallway, which means my colleagues aren't people who are running travel soccer teams or people who have to worry about NCAA restrictions. They're people who are running on campus events. So I get emails of like, hey, we're having an activity night. Do you mind throwing an esports event as part of that activities night, as opposed to having to worry about kind of keeping us into a league and staying competitive, and our only focus being competition, which when your student population is a little bit smaller, telling, a very interested population of students that like, hey, you're only going to be playing this game for the entire semester because we have to make sure that you're up to a certain competitive standard, means that, I can free up my students to be a little bit more passionate and get them more involved in a lot of different ways, which I've really seen a lot of positive things come out of and I've really enjoyed.
That's great. And those different ways, are there like certain positions that maybe students have a skill in
Yeah.
and you empower them to develop it, or how does that work?
To a certain degree, I mean, a lot of it is going to be self-guided because we're a smaller institution, so we have a lot less tools of like giving you like, you know, everything that you could ever need. But I'm perfectly comfortable being a source of guidance in a number of different ways. And kind of some of the things that have popped up more recently is like we've had students who have gone on to take on video editor positions local businesses or commercials, stuff like that. And then we also have students who are more interested in graphic design. We're going to have a student who's going to help us design our merch this year. And, being a part of esports, what I found is that there's so many different jobs that fall under the larger umbrella of esports that aren't just like I click buttons very good. Is, for the people who work in production, there's people who work in the events, there's people who work in the planning, there's people who work in, the social media part of it. And so I think it would be disingenuous to try and have an esports program that doesn't help people prepare for the variety of things that fall under esports that aren't just, playing a game.
That that is great. And your community, like the students or the incoming students or the parents, like how would you describe your community? Because it always talks a lot about how the esports program is.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the things that I like most about our community is that they are genuine. I don't really oftentimes have to like force them to do something. A lot of times they're taking up the initiative on their own. Like I will walk into the esports room and some days they'll all be playing Minecraft, some days they'll all be playing Fortnite, some days they'll all be playing Overwatch, and they're all, I don't need to tell them to do that type of stuff. They are naturally curious. They're exploring what their options are. It doesn't even have to just be video games. Like right now, we have an entire shelf dedicated to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic cards because we have a bunch of kids who just come into the game room and they'll sit around the desk and play card games or they'll play board games, stuff like that. And I think that's a really good place to be, is where I don't have to be like super hands-on and kind of instruct them through everything. They are capable of taking steps on their own.
That
And I
is
think that's
great.
a really
Mhm.
useful thing to come out of college with that skill set more than anything. Is if you come out of college and you don't feel comfortable kind of starting up your own thing and being like, this is what I want to do, I think your college experience may have not helped you the most that it could.
And yeah, that is so true. Based on your experience and personality, like what you're looking to develop in students in their university years so they can take into the workforce, be
Yeah.
skills or like.
I mean, I think the one that always comes to mind is that kind of self-starter attitude and that ability to both be, somebody who starts things on your own, but also
Mhm.
somebody who can join into something and not have to be kind of hand like guided through everything step by step. You can kind of say, okay, here's where like I can hop in and kind of get going on my own, and here's where I may need a little bit of assistance, and kind of being able to marry those two and find a good working flow. And I think that's another thing that being, kind of thinking about video games a lot helps with, is being able to go from like, okay, here's one thing that I'm doing, and then I have reached either, my deadline or my goal in that, and kind of shifting over to another thing and both taking lessons from that first thing, but also kind of enriching your ability to be a holistic person, experiences many facets of existence.
Mhm. And going back to what you mentioned about community,
Yeah.
um, how does the esports program, you or the staff or the staff at Randolph College, offer like internship or like work opportunities after graduation? Can you get into a bit of that? Because also like parents are very interested in like
Yeah, I
how
completely
a
understand.
college can, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we are a small school, so our opportunities are limited, but this year we are kind of expanding. I have 3 interns this year that are mostly going to be helping out with they're starting clubs, they're getting events run, they're working on creating stuff. I forget if I mentioned this, but one of our students this year is going to be really involved in designing our jerseys and our apparel for this year, which I think is really like a super unique experience that you wouldn't really get unless you took initiative. And basically, the student walked up to me, and I knew that they were a skilled designer because I've seen their doodles around the room, and they just kind of like leave them on post-it notes. But they walked up to me and they were like, "Hey, is there a way that I can get involved in like designing things and getting graphics and motion graphics and kind of apparel out there?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, I think that's something that you could really get involved with." And I think that's one of maybe Randolph's greatest strengths is, if you look us up, one of the main outliers about us is that our faculty to student ratio is really great. Like we have, I think it's like 5 faculty for every like 1 to 5 is like I think the number something like maybe it's 12. I'm terrible with numbers, but it's one of those things where like every student that I've interacted with really feels like they have faculty members, multiple faculty members that they can go to with their concerns. And so I am some students, and sometimes I am like their third in line of people that they would go to, and I think that's really great in terms of both being able to run into those opportunities like the Jersey one, where you just kind of walk up to a faculty member and it's like, "Hey, here are my interests. Like, can you help with that?" And people are pretty well connected, so they can help out. And Lynchburg, Virginia, where we're located, is a pretty small town. Not the smallest, but it's pretty well connected. So if you're connected to Randolph, then you kind of get your foot in the door a lot of places, which has been really beneficial because a lot of students get kind of employed elsewhere basically immediately because we are well known in the community.
That is great, and especially the that teachers and professors like know your name and it's help you like especially for international students, that
Yeah, absolutely.
overseas and the adaptation. I mean, it's already an advantage that they're part of an esports program because they already have like a community that it's easier for them to that. But like plus, if the professors are also very welcoming and the student if they need help and they ask for it they can get it. They're not just a number. That is super helpful. When I went to the US years ago, I went to a small school and I wouldn't change it for anything. Like a class of 100 to 200 students. I wouldn't have made the friends I made and had the experience I had. So
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
that
I
for
mean, I
sure.
I went to a larger school and it's been so different compared to here where like at a larger school it really does feel like there's like 1 or 2 faculty max that you're going to interact with in like a meaningful way. And here it seems like every student has like 3 or 4 faculty that they will just, I see kids walking down this hallway all the time just veering into everybody's doors because they will just walk into a room, let the person who works there know all of their problems, like move on to the next one, or they'll stay in there working on solutions for like hours and hours, and it's great to see.
That is great. And when doing like schedules, like they have their academic, their practice, their online competition. So like, how do you guide them, help them, like, or work around their schedule, their class schedule to have like a
Yeah,
schedule that it's balanced and it's not like a burnout schedule, like they can easily, especially for those freshmen, those first year students.
yeah. I mean, obviously, school is going to come first, especially since we are not like a super competitively minded program. Your priority is going to be your schooling, and one of the things that Randolph does, if you look it up, is we have this Take Two program, which basically means students are really only taking 2 classes a semester. You can take more if you want, but kind of the default is 2, and that means you have each day you're kind of alternating where like Monday you'll be 1 class, Tuesday you'll be a second class, and then one of the major selling points of this program is that Wednesdays you will have off every single time. Is that, Wednesdays are basically for catching up on your schoolwork, getting involved in esports if you want. So you see a lot of kind of clubs and practices and whatever on those Wednesdays. So it's not like Wednesday is a dead day on campus by any means. It's actually one of the more active days, but it means that students are able to kind of have that natural balance in their program of, you know, you may be, in class Monday and Tuesday, but Wednesday you're going to be able to catch up, or you're going to, be able to put in extra time where you need it. And I think that's one of the things that students have found pretty helpful for balancing their schedules. And then, I mean, just in general, my programs tend to be a little bit more post class. So they start like 4 p.m. and go to like 8 p.m. So during the school year, I'm not really like a 9 to 5 worker. I'm more like an 11 to 7 worker. But I mean, in that, I also just, if you are like committed to being a part of the program on a regular basis, I will definitely work around your schedule. And I also do stuff like one-on-one coaching in case kids are interested in getting like a ton of focus time on top of their already existing schedule. But all of that, really everything that we do is opt-in, and I don't want to make anything obligatory and make you feel like you have to fall behind on other things because you're going to be participating in esports, because at the end of the day, we are just sitting in front of a computer. It shouldn't be stressful.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing the Wednesday thing. I think I've never heard it from a university, and
Yeah,
like usually sometimes I have like Friday off, but like it's amazing how you can restart your week in the same
yeah,
week. You know, like
yeah.
with all the energy, and that's super helpful, especially so they don't stress and stuff. You know, it's not like a long weekend, but it's a recharge day, recovery day. So
Yeah, I mean,
pretty
students
pretty
seem to have
smart.
really gotten into it, even kids who were a part of the school before they made the swap over, because it's not like, the oldest changed. I think it started in the year before I got here. But even those students have more or less come around to it, because it is very different than like the classic college experience, which is just like 5 straight days of classes, which is what I was used to. And when I came in, I was like, oh, I can just do Wednesday like afternoon programming because you guys aren't going to be busy. That's so much fun.
Hmm. No, that's great. That's great. Where can students find you on social media, you or your program?
I'd say the main place to get in contact would be either over Discord. There's a link if you look up Randolph Esports. And then my email is also on our website. Um, those are the main ways. I don't really post about like Randolph on my social media or anything, because honestly, I don't really use social media that much. I just kind of like scroll on Twitter every once in a while.
Okay, Lucas, thank you so much for your time, and we'll
Thanks
stay
for
in
having
touch.
me.